So when I ask students to form sentences, their own meaningful sentences, I get them to use not just the word, but the word and its collocation as well. In the same spirit, I use simple concordances as well with students. After we spent time understanding collocations, and as they become more advanced and used to using these, I then introduce a concordancer as an alternative to using a dictionary. I don't know if you're familiar with concordances, but this is a simple one, and it's called phrases in English, and it takes information from the British National Corpus. Okay, so I get students to type in the word, maybe the new piece of vocabulary. Here, our example is second hand, and then they press enter, and they're given a list then of 10 examples of the word in context. And I find for higher level students, we do have them. We do have higher level students, and they do use this. I'd say 70% of the students that I show this to, they don't use it. But there is that critical 30% that go on to start using the concordances, so they better understand the vocabulary. Here we can see some collocations: sell second-hand toys, supplying second-hand weapons is probably not a high frequency collocation, but second-hand clothes, second-hand stalls, second-hand books. So, you know, we're giving this word to the students, and we're increasing their collocational competency. Again, this is something I think that we overlook a lot of the time. So that's quite a handy website. I'm just going to throw the ball over to you, and you can shout out whenever you're ready. Here I've got a text. We've got some target vocab in red, and there are probably some other nouns or high frequency content words which would be useful for our students here. Could you just look through the text and identify some collocations? Remember, your collocations on the syntagmatic structure of life, you know, they don't have to be next door neighbors. For example, here we have the word abstract, but we've got photographs next door but one, and photography next door but two. Yet these are strong collocations: abstract photography, abstract photos. Okay, can you have a look through? I'll just give you a couple of minutes, and you can shout out any useful collocations that you can see here. Remember to turn off your mic or turn it on either.
Objective records.
Okay.
Practical functions.
Okay.
Widely used.
Go on, we'll have three more.
Expensive.
Final product.
Aesthetic purposes.
Function.
Yeah, so, you know, often we might do a comprehension exercise based on this paragraph. Thank you for that. But we overlook some of the patterns, and these are very useful for the students. Here are some I've spotted: sophisticated equipment, photographers' creativity, acknowledge there is a limit. Police work, practical functions, yeah. Again, it's all a case of noticing and raising the amount of encounters that students have with words. Okay, I want to look at function as well. I'm not going to spend as much time on this. But as with collocations and collocations of these, content words, we can focus on collocations, and so the patterns that we find around function. If we look at some examples, we can see that when we're looking at functional phrases, they can be quite fixed, and they can be quite variable as well. And I'm sure that we show our students these. So we have some examples here. And from our sample text, here are some collocations, something that's hybrid as well. We have some hybrid phrases that I've just, I've highlighted. So we get students, they tend to use this, don't they, for their topic sentences. They might use something like this. In recent years, there has been a general trend for such a is sometimes called a, it's probably low frequency. Despite these extra costs, supplied directly from, avoiding the need to. So some are more frequent than others, but it's just an example. We can spot these patterns as well. And how he refers to the way that we put our collocations into our collocations, if that makes any sense. So at the beginning we have our collocation, and then we have that collocation that becomes part of a collocation. And how he says that word sequences of primed words, so these collocations, also become loaded with contexts and co-contexts, and cotexts. This is a direct result of priming. So, I understand this basically as the word is the passenger in the car, and the pattern that we see here is the vehicle for the word. And this is my main point. So if our functional language is incorrectly chunked, the input will not be stored at all, or will be incorrectly and wrongly stored. Okay, so what is Hill referring to here? He's talking about the importance of pronunciation, or vocalizing chunked language. So, how it's really important for students to nail pronunciation of some of these expressions so that they can store it correctly. And my analogy is a computer. So if we look at a computer, how is information stored in a computer? Well, it's stored in the hard drive, and a computer uses a CPU to retrieve that information. Likewise, language is stored in our brains, in our hard drive, in our ROM, and we store and we retrieve the language using our RAM or our CPU. It's a mistake to think that when we speak, we are retrieving one word at a time. We're actually retrieving these chunks, these 70% of language, these patterns. Otherwise, you can imagine if we just retrieved language word by word, I would probably be speaking like this instead of I'd probably be speaking like this. So, you know, language is stored and retrieved as chunks of language. And this is why my final point, this is why these little exercises that we find in Unlock, I find them so important, and yet we overlook them. We do overlook them. Here we can see some lexical expressions on compromising and finalizing a decision. So students are asked to fill in the gap, and we might get them to check their answers, and then we might shout out one or two of them to read out the phrase. I think it's really important to spend time with students repeating and getting the pronunciation right on these exercises so that they can store the language correctly. And that way, when it comes to their written assignments, that they're better able to recall the information. So it's really important. And you know what I've been doing, okay, these are slightly decontextualized, these tasks, but again, I go back to the reading text, and I've got students to start reading out more as well from text, maybe paragraphs, this kind of thing, to try and get them improving their pronunciation so that they can store the language. So in summary, in the beginning was the word, not the grammar. Students need to be primed, have these meaningful encounters as much as possible to high frequency collocations and collocations. And this can be done through noticing activities using reading texts. And prom work is essential if students are to correctly store the language that we teach them. And here's some further reading for you. Okay, so these are the guys I studied on my Delta, really, and found very useful. That's it. Does anybody have any questions about the session?
No questions. It's very useful. Unfortunately, because of the online delivery, we've got a paucity of time and interaction, and that's where it's equally challenging. And as you say, if you want people to recognize and utter patterns, they just don't have that interaction at the time. So, but I like the idea of using the corpus, for example, and showing, because the students are pretty good at recognizing patterns, and I think that's something we could optimize. So it might be worth looking at, especially if we go into another year of online. It means we really have to. We've already streamlined, and if we are going to keep streamlined, even more so, because the amount of material we're not using, we should really start focusing on, maybe, as you say, these lexical chunks with the oral input. That will give them something to get a handle on. It's something they can do.
It's almost been a substitute for me, rather than teaching grammar per se, you know, but rather going to the Lexis, and then the grammar feeding on from that, really.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at this point in their proficiency, there's no time really to go back. Mm-hmm. We've got to just give them what they have and to get through, and you can see that with some of their writing as well. You know, the scaffolding, some of it's there, but they don't have the bricks and mortar. But if we can give them something that shows a development of their lexical within the lexical chunks, the grammar can wait. I think, as you say, you know, the word is important. So very useful. Thank you, Thomas.
No, you're welcome.
Okay.
Stop sharing here my screen.
I'm requesting.